Hello and welcome. Today we're covering how to use Snow Atlas to manage inventory KPIs and ensure complete trustworthy data. First of all, what does Snow Atlas do? It's a centralized inventory management system as well as licensing and compliance. Why is this good? It gives you a unified view to be able to consolidate your hardware, software, cloud assets into a single platform, reducing blind spots further. You can use a number of different ways to get data, hardware and software data into the Atlas platform. This can be done via the Snow Inventory Agent or via using different connectors such as SCCM, ServiceNow, BigFix, vSphere, and many more. Each one of these gives you the best potential to gather as much data you can get, which will give you the best data accuracy, as well as give you the most best way to give data completionness of your environment and allow you to have full visibility of your data and hardware assets within the company. So, what's some of the key factors that others might do to make it data accuracy and completionist? So, one of the first key factors to do is using the Snow Inventory Agent to bring your data in from your devices, such as hardware information and software information, which also will give you the best insight into individual applications, computers throughout your environment. So, how do you validate and see this data into the UI? One of the best ways to see this is using the Snow dashboard. As you can see on this main screen, we can see that on the dashboard it shows us how many computers we have inventoried in the month, how many are new. For example, in our tenant, we have 5 new ones, and we can see in the next month we have 20 new ones and 5 existing, and then in November we have 25 total and no new devices. So, looking at this, you might be asking, how did you get this data into the tenant? In this tenant, we have used the Snow Inventory Agent to do its daily scan, which is at 9 a.m. each day by default. And this will create a encrypted file called a .snowpack, which is then sent via the agent to your extender and then forwarded to your tenant securely. Once the Atlas tenant has the snowpack, what it will do is go through a ingestion process, which will take the hardware information, then the raw software information, and put it through a number of sterilization processes, such as a data intelligence service process, which will take the raw agent data, such as file paths, EXEs, reg keys on Windows devices, and other such key information that might not always be the most clear and might have multiple lines with similar rows for multiple applications, and then sterilize this into a non-duplicated method. So as we can see, if we go into applications, here's how some of the sterilized data might look. As we can see here, we get 7-zip v18, but inside of here might be a number of different EXEs that has been made to launch this application. And using all of these, we have consolidated it and make a trustworthy and reliable recognition of the version of the application. And there's a number of different factors that might be considered, such as Microsoft's Microsoft Word applications and Office applications use the same exe for the different versions from 2016. So we use reg keys to be able to identify key information and versions to be able to give you an accurate and reliable recognition of this application. So you're able to see which versions you do have installed to make sure you can compliance and add licenses as needed to cover these. So once the data is in, how do you make sure you only keep the most reliable data and up-to-date data? As always, environments and companies are changing, where devices are being added and removed throughout the time. By using a system called Quarantine Management, which can be found under Settings, Asset Management, and if we scroll down, we can see, for example, Computer and Mobile Device Quarantine. You might be asking, what does this do? By having this enabled, by default, it is set up for 30 days. After 30 days of inactivity from your devices, if that's meaning you have not sent in any snowpacks from your agent, or a connector has not sent in a device reference file, or also as a snowpack or a .inv file, these devices will no longer update, and after 30 days will change status to quarantine, which I will show you in a second what that looks like. After they've been in quarantine for 30 days, you have the additional option to expand on this by using the number of days computers or mobile devices will be quarantined until action. Because by default, a device in quarantine still goes against your compliance. But if you do not wish to have this after 60 days of being quarantined, you can choose an action to take onto these devices, such as deleting the device off the system, setting it to inactive, which will mean it's excluded for the compliance, or archiving, which means it will create a reference record in the archived computer report and delete the original record of the system, so it will only be present in that report. But please be aware this system is not enabled by default, and you will have to come in and enable this. And click Save. Just to show you what this looks like for a device, if we go back to SAM Core, click onto a computer. As we can see here, the status field here tells you what current status your devices are in. As you can see here, we have some radio devices, so these are why these are set to quarantine, but we have not set an action to be enabled, so this is why these devices haven't been changing status or deleted off the system. So going into the next part regarding KPI tracking, so that could be hardware, compliance, and other such key factors when it comes to tracking in your environment. As we mentioned before, one of the key ways to looking at this is the dashboards and overview pages, as for example, your computer inventory status. So this lets you know how many devices have come in a day, yesterday, week, month, or over a month. This gives you a great insight into knowing how your devices are being sent in, giving you a great insight into knowing if your devices haven't been inventoried in the last month, is that going to be the most accurate data, and might be something you need to look into on the agent side or connector side to make sure you have the most up-to-date data and having that to be sent in so you can make sure your compliance is covered with the most up-to-date data. Also on this page, you have a great insight into the most used application, which means you have an insight into how many minutes or how many times an application might be run, which is great because if you know that lots of users are using OneDrive and you're paying for less licenses, you might want to look to expand on these licenses to cover all of this so your compliance is valid for when it comes to an audit time. On this page, we also have access to alerts, which are key information such as extended support, past end of life, and past end of support applications. Why is this key? Because one, for security aspects, if you have outdated software, there might be vulnerabilities that you do not want. For example, Chrome editions, you might want to update those because Chrome updates a number of security patches fairly frequently and often, and keeping track of those versions is key. Other such information you might be able to see here is if you've set applications into a deny list, or how many applications have usage but do not have a license, which means your compliance might be out. Going into a warning, we also get an idea of discovered assets. What do we mean by a discovered asset? Discovered asset means we have a reference to the device, for example, coming from your Active Directory, but we do not have enough detail from this to create a record. Commonly, this is because you've set up the Active Directory connector or one of these other discovery type assets connectors, and these will give references but never a full record, meaning you will need an agent or an agent replacement connector, such as the SCCM connector, the Intune connector, BigFix, and so on from there. As we can see, if we click onto this, it takes us to the report, and we click Show Report if the data isn't already there, and you can see where the data had come in from. So if we had inventoried an agent with this device, it will map on the host name and the IP address, and then add this to the computers list here with the full record, which will contain the software and hardware information. How else can Atlas help you track your and maintain your environment? For example, if you have an application or where you have a special deal with the manufacturer for compliance or licensing, you might want to exclude it manually from the compliance exclusion, which can be done by going to Home, Administration, and clicking on Compliance Exclusion, and simply clicking Create Exclusion. adding a reason, add a rule name, clicking next. And for example, I do not want to have 7-zip calculated into our compliance. As we can see here, and selecting the checkbox, we can see now it is added to the list. Clicking next, we can select which computers are going to be excluded from the compliance. For example, I want all of our computers to not have it. And clicking next, we can see a summary of which computers have the application installed and which ones will be covered. To make sure it's enabled, you click active down here and click save. As we can see here, this is now excluding these computers from the compliance. To note, for this to reflect in your licensing, you'll need to click onto the compliance and click recalculate for this to take effect. This might take a while, so please do be patient. And a good way to see if this has taken effect is by coming to the reports, going to compliance summary, removing the standard filter or adding in the filter you wish. For example, we're going to go with the 7-zip we just excluded. Adding a wildcard because the version, and letting this run. And as we can see here, there is the row we had, and we can see we are not out of compliance for this application. And clicking onto it, we can go into their application further. We can see compliance. Here we are compliant. And we can take a look into the compliance details further here, as we can see by manual exclusion, which is the compliance exclusion effect. If you wish to remove this, you can come into administration, click on compliance exclusion, click on the actions and delete. We do recommend that you do monitor these and keep these up to date, as these can create holes in your compliance if you are not maintaining these correctly. Alternatively, if you have applications that you do not wish to be on your computers, but you want to be able to monitor for these, you can create an application denial list, click add rule, fill in the details, add a criteria. For example, if we stick with the 7-zip, click preview results, we can see there's all the versions we have possible. And then we can click save, because I do not wish for anybody to have 7-zip installed. And we can validate this by going into applications, selecting to a 7-zip version, and we can see at the top now it says deny listed. As well as if you go to the computers, select a computer, we can go on to applications, and we can see deny listed, as well as prior, we still have the manual exclusion just because we haven't recalculated the compliance. Further from this, if you come back to the administration page, the home page for the Snow dashboard, we can see that there is the denial listed alerts there, and you can click onto it and see which ones are involved in the denial listed feature that affect your environment. Going back to administration, application denial list, we can simply delete this as well by clicking the delete button and clicking OK, and that will remove the remark from the applications. So the question is, once the environment gets the data, how do you make sure it gets updated, and how does it get updated onto the front end? Once Atlas has received the snowpack, as I mentioned before, it will go through a sterilization, normalization process, which makes sure there's no duplicates and make sure your data is reliable and trustworthy, preventing duplication, such as multiple connectors might bring in data in different formats. So we use a process called hostname normalization to remove the domains to make sure the agents and connected data and Active Directory data are normalized so we can merge them reliably and trustworthy on a number of key factors, making sure that your data sets can be relied on. Why might you want this to be relied on in that sort of sense and sterilized? It's so you can look at the data and make sure you're not seeing two versions of the same data sets that might not be the same data sets, or could be the same data set if the system has been updated or changed since it last came in, or has come in from multiple sources, allowing for you to trust it. How does it get through that process? This, as of current, for a lot of customers, this is going to rely on the system called a data update job. This is a one-time job that runs every night at 9 p.m. by default, and this will run overnight. As it does that, it'll go through the sterilization and normalize the data before presenting it on the front end, as we can see here. To note, this is going to be changing as of the end of December 2025 to a new pipeline system, which will allow for data to be sterilized and normalized throughout the day instead of a one-time job, which should allow the system to show the data faster and quicker as well, so allowing you to do multiple updates in one day. Please be aware that each page does rely on a stash update, so it is key to know that the data you do have might take some time to reflect correctly, such as application runs on a stash every 6 hours, based on the amount of data you have as well. So please do be patient and do review the dates while reviewing the data sets. And the key factor about this is if you are a company that uses other external data viewers, such as SCCM, or using stuff like ServiceNow, if you're using ServiceNow, you should be able to export the data to ServiceNow using the different ServiceNow connectors, or bring in data from ServiceNow or other connectors like SCCM, BigFix, and Intune, allowing for a complete data set that can be shared across different platforms and reviewed, meaning you can expand into how you work and also expanding on the reliability of the data sets further upon using this. And all of this together gives you the complete and accurate insight for your compliance, your environment, allowing you to be confident on how to license and scale and reduce as you need for your company, saving you money and allowing you to put reviews into where it needs to be when it comes to audits and be trusted and relied on. I hope this has been insightful. Thank you for watching.